Hi, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. Today I have the wonderful Beth Scoles, who is that, did I say it right? Scoles? Okay. Um, and I know Beth from running. I was a marathon runner once upon a time, and she's a Beagle mom, wife to Dan, a mental health warrior, and she's an engineer at Dow. So I'm really excited to dive in and kind of see how education has played a role in your success today and kind of I know we had mentioned you think success is something different than you used to think, so I'm really excited to delve into that. Um, so I'm going to interview her about how she got to where she is and how grief and mental health has played a part in it and changed your perspective about things. So thank you for joining me and being my first official guest. I'm excited for the interview. So, Beth, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and kind of let people know who you are, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm Beth Scoles. I've lived in the Great Lakes Bay region my entire life and been married for 15 years to my husband, Dan. And as you mentioned, I'm a Beagle mom. I actually have 4 dogs and I'm an absolute animal lover, including that's kind of my side passions where I do a lot of my volunteer work. I serve on the board for a humane society and definitely have a soft spot for animals. I'm also an engineer and project manager and have been for 17 years. And like you mentioned, I'm a runner. I'm very involved in the running community and kind of on the hobby side of things. I really like reading. I have plants just absolutely everywhere in my house. And my guilty pleasure is true crime podcasts.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm not a I'm not a of true crime. I mean, I used to watch like Law and Order SVU back in the day, so I mean,
Yeah,
I like that kind of crime, but yeah, I'll have to listen. So what is your favorite one? Which one would you recommend to everybody?
I love the prosecutors podcast. They take a very logical, data-driven approach. So they're not, on any one side. They just bring that logic to a case and try to draw conclusions out of it. So I very much like that they're looking at the science, they're looking at the data, they go into things with opinions. Just a very logical approach.
Awesome. Okay. So tell us a little bit about like your family, your upbringing. Did you have both parents in the home? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah. So I grew up in a two-parent household. When I was younger, we were extremely poor. It was very hand to mouth. Eventually, my mom did go to college and complete her degree, and that helped ease kind of that burden.
Mhm.
But grew up in a two-parent household, good household, had one sibling. Have been in the Great Lakes Bay region my entire life. It's been a really wonderful place to grow up. I'm specifically in Merrill, little teeny farming community. All my neighbors farm. Just a very quiet, slow area to live.
Awesome. And so, did you feel pressure from your parents to go to college?
Actually, not at all. I did get the benefit of seeing as a child my mom go back to college and how that really improved things for my family because that was finally the first time where the first thought every single day wasn't necessarily how are we going to pay for stuff, was finally
Mhm.
easing that burden with her getting her college degree. So I was able to see that, but I still came from really simple means. College was getting more and more expensive, and even the difference in how expensive college was from the time my mom went to when I went was just flabbergasting.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
still had
and
some
I'm
of her
sure
old
it's
receipts
even
from
more now.
Delta. And one of her classes would be like the cost of lunch. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, look what I would have to pay. And so I
Mhm.
felt absolutely no pressure from them at all because they kind of couldn't. They weren't going to financially support me, and they couldn't. I wouldn't expect that burden on them either, but I was completely on my own to pay for college. Which was a very scary prospect for me, especially at the time we were just starting to head into a recession, and that's when the loan crisis hit. And I wasn't a very desirable student loan candidate. It absolutely scared the daylights out of me to think about going, 150,000 dollars in debt in such a bad market. And so I really felt no pressure to go to college, but I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I kind of broke the mold in my family, and I really liked science and engineering. So everybody
Mhm.
else, kind of worked minimum wage jobs, or my mom went into teaching, and no one in my family had ever gone into science. And really, the only way I was ever going to meaningfully work in that field was to go to college. And I was so lucky to get a scholarship. That's the only way I went to college.
Mhm.
I applied for as many scholarships as I could, and I would get, $1,000 here, that kind of thing, but it's not enough for a 4-year degree.
Mm-hmm.
I was so, so lucky to get a full scholarship. And
Oh, that's
that's,
wonderful.
that let me go to school, that, was giving me my life that I have now. It was a massive, massive blessing. And I really hate that college can be so inaccessible for people just from that debt standpoint. I can't imagine graduating with a mountain of debt and, maybe not even getting to work in your field. And I was so incredibly lucky to get that scholarship and then not have that worry and just focus on my studies and then getting a job without wondering how I was going to pay for $150,000 in debt when, I could barely afford the application fees for college in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
I was extremely lucky. And then when I was working, my employer paid for my master's degree. So just super blessed to have gotten basically 7 years of education completely for free.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made just such a massive difference in my life. I would still probably be the same person without it, but in terms of, having financial security and kind of building the life I want, as well as, really liking my job. This was what I always wanted to do. And I feel very lucky to have been able to do that, but that dream lived or died with that scholarship, which is just a shame because that's a flip of a coin. It was just incredibly lucky for something that's made such a difference in my life.
Mm-hmm. Um, so your job is pretty male dominated. Um, and you said that there's not very many women engineers. So has being a woman gotten in your way, to climbing the corporate ladder, and how did you overcome it?
So it's definitely male dominated. And I feel like it was a lot worse when I started back in, 2006, 2007. It was not atypical to be the only woman in the room. In fact, I was very used to it, or at least I knew it would happen. I think I really never got used to it. You feel out of place every single time,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's your first day on the job or 10 years in. But there's a lot of times I was the only female in the building or in the department. Just it was very weighted in terms of gender. And I was always treated very nicely. And I know that's not everybody's experience in that scenario. So it did work out okay for me, but even still, even with everyone treating me fine, it was still just something I was very aware of in the back of my head in every room I was in, that I'm the one thing that's different. It
Mm-hmm.
always felt like more people were watching me because I was the one thing that was different. So I definitely put more pressure on myself to make sure that, I was bringing my A game. I was doing everything I could. I was going above and beyond constantly because I felt I had to prove myself. And that might have been something I totally just put on myself,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the perception I had because I was the only one that was different. Was okay, if I'm different and I'm under the microscope, I better, hit this out of the park. And
Mm-hmm.
worked so many hours and tried so hard and took on every extra thing. And, it did help me build my career, but it came at a cost. It's for a good decade, I had no hobbies and I hardly had time for my friends. And I was just exhausted all the time. And I really feel like it came from that because I felt that pressure to do more, be more, just to fit in or just to, have a seat at the table. And
Mm-hmm.
the one neat thing though is I work for a very progressive company now, and they put a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion, and they put that in their hiring practices. And after 15 years, I had my first female manager, and she was amazing, just absolutely phenomenal to work for, and just all the great leadership qualities as well. She brought empathy, and just it wasn't until I had a female manager that I realized how much that representation actually meant to me, that I could
Mm-hmm.
actually see another female in a leadership position or imagine myself different places in the company. And it was just weird for me having been used to that for 15 years of being the only female in the room, of always having male bosses, and they were great, but it was always the same. And then the first day I had that female boss, it was just something kind of clicked in the back of my mind of this is different. I didn't realize how important it was to me until I actually had that representation.
Mm-hmm.
And then since then I've had another female boss, and she is equally wonderful. And it's just amazing the micro difference that makes in your brain, and how much that kind of lets go that, maybe I don't belong here, or I have to try harder, or I have to earn my spot here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's wonderful. Um, did you want to talk a little bit more about your work, or do you want to talk about like the causes that you are interested in?
Let's do causes. So one of your questions you'd sent me in advance was, what impact do you like to have on your community? And volunteering is something that's really important to me. And one of my favorite organizations, it's the Humane Society of Midland County. So I love working with animals. I have my other, projects that I like too, but animals, they depend on you and they're so helpless on their own, and they can bring such joy to people's lives. And So I serve on their board. I help out with a lot of their events and keeping the shelter running, as well as a lot of our outreach programs. Like we have Pet Pantry, which helps support low income families that have a pet.
Mm-hmm.
And by giving them food for their pet, and we help out with like the healthcare of their pet and that kind of thing. That way, pets are accessible to everybody. And think what joy pets can bring to the right person, and that shouldn't be sheerly income based. So we have a lot of those programs to help out with the community. I also serve on a couple other professional boards. Another thing that I've absolutely loved doing, I'm a STEM ambassador. And so there's a middle school that I partner with that I get to do STEM labs. So doing chemistry labs, biology labs, that kind of thing. And so working with a lot of age ranges. And that's been a lot of fun with working with kids and trying to get them involved in science related topics and talk about potential careers there. And, now that I've had that first female manager too, knowing the value of seeing a female that is in a specific field or career. So trying to be a little bit more of that face for it too, just so that way, little girls in elementary and middle school can see a female that's in a science field.
Do you have a lot of female students in your STEM class?
Yes. So it's just the regular classrooms, which is great because I feel like a lot of younger females may not want to go into like more of the advanced classes and that kind of thing. So I'm really glad it's just the general classes. That way you reach everybody. And that was actually how I decided to go into science in the first place, was that really hadn't been a thought in my brain at all. No one in my family was in science. Most didn't go to college anyway. And then I had the best teacher for a general science class, and she took time to work with everybody, and she was so passionate. So I'm really glad it's just the general classes, not like an advanced placement. So that way you might get the kid that never really considered it, but hey, there's someone that, seems fun and looks like me, and she says it's a great time. Maybe I'll consider it a little bit more. So I love very much that it's the general classes, and I get to talk to everybody about it, whether they like science or not. And the goal is maybe a couple that didn't like science before, maybe they think about it a little bit more.
As far as science for me, I love biology. That's about it. Like,
Anything with math, you're done.
anything with math, I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah.
So just real quick, going back to your job real quick, and then we can go back to your causes. Um, would you do if your job stopped existing? Like, what would happen?
So one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was your mission never changes, even if your platform does. And that advice was given to me when one company I was working for was going through a severe downsizing. I thought I might lose my job. So I thought I would be in that position. And that advice, it's so universal, and I've carried it with me a lot. So for me, my mission is fixing things and making things better. I do it right now as a project manager. That's my main thing, is anytime something's broken or they need someone to help fix something, I go in, I pull the team together, we make it better. That's just what I do. So that's what I do. If I had a title, it's not necessarily engineer or project manager, it's fixer. So if my job went away today, what I would specifically look for is something where I can take that same mindset of, come in, make something better. So that's what I would specifically look for. I'd probably try to find something as project management again, just because that's such a logical approach to, okay, there's a problem, here's the root cause, here's what we're going to do to fix it, go. But I'm just wired to try to always make things better. So that would definitely be something I would look for in my next job, whether it was in an engineering field or not.
So would you try something new, or do you think like science is it for you?
I'm always open to something new. That being said, I'm really happy with what I'm doing. It took me 17 years to get to my dream job, which I absolutely love doing. So I definitely want to keep doing this, and especially with doing different projects and working with different people. My job really is new every day. So I don't think I will get bored, because I'm constantly working on new projects and new areas and new buildings with new people. So it's always something new. So maybe I'll change my mind in 5 years. But I doubt it. It's a great way to network with a ton of people, to fix things, to have an impact. It's just been a really great way to do the things that I'm good at and that I really like to do.
Awesome. All right. So, let's see. We talked a little bit about the Humane Society. Do you want to talk about your little bow and ties event a little bit?
Oh, my ties and tails. So
Yes.
yeah, our Humane Society, it's not funded by the county, it's not funded by the state. We have to do all of our own fundraising. And so we always try to do a mix of small events and big events. And we just had our big black tie event 2 weeks ago. So much planning went into it to be able to have this really big gala for 200 people, and we had silent auction and live auction things. And we had this Elvis theme that was so much fun. And we work so hard to always have it be fun and fresh every single year. And it's our single biggest money raising event. And we had a record setting year. And
Oh, that's
it's always
amazing.
a lot of fun to attend and be a part of, but it all goes directly to the animals too. We're so cautious to be good stewards with all of our fundraising and making sure that it's going towards the animal care and running the shelter and our communities in the program and, you know, our spay neuter program to keep pet populations under control. And it's a lot of work. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization to do phenomenal things. And one big plug for them too is, so they have one of the highest adoption rates in the nation. So out of the entire United States, one of the highest pet adoption rates, which is just
Wow.
amazing.
Right here in mid-Michigan.
Right here in mid-Michigan. Yep, we've gone to national conferences to talk about what we do, and our shelter director's absolutely amazing at it. And the other big thing too is, compared to most shelters, they're kill shelters. We are a no-kill shelter. Any animal that comes through our doors, they are given a second chance. And how often is everything given a second chance? We will work with you on behavior issues, on, you know, getting past your shyness, of finding the right home for you. If you need medical care, we'll get it to you. So every animal gets a second chance. Most shelters have a euthanasia rate between 30 and 50%. And ours
Wow.
is 0.5%. And that's only if the animal either can't be rehabbed, it's super aggressive and it will bite, or if it's a mercy thing, the pet's going to perish soon and it's in pain.
Okay.
So we have one of the best adoption rates. We are a no-kill shelter, just amazing, amazing positive things. And if you think too about, you know, we've had 30,000 animals be adopted out since 2011. So 30,000 animals.
That's
That is
wonderful.
30,000 pieces of happiness that you're putting out into the community.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I love that. Okay, so you we had talked a little bit about success. So um how do you so I'm sorry. What do you feel success is now versus what you thought then? And how did the last couple of years change your perspective?
So I'm glad you gave me this question to think about ahead of time, just because this has been such a loaded question for me, because it has changed so much in the last couple of years. And it's still an evolving idea for me on what success looks like. And it's still something I'm working on. So I know what success looked like before. So success before was completely career driven. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, and I felt like I had to actually prove myself. All of my goals and all of my success was tied pretty much solely to just my career work. I was working nonstop. I was exhausted. I didn't have a lot in terms of hobbies and friends. I didn't have a lot of joy in my life. You know, I did build a career. It did help me get to where I am today. It got me through grad school and working full time, which I never recommend. It was like sleep for 3 years. Um, so it did have some benefit, but it wasn't sustainable. And my life came to an absolute standstill in 2021. And that was when my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He started to lose his voice, went to the doctor. Next week, stage 4 cancer, given months to live. And for me, it's just everything just stopped the day I found that out. And there was no more, okay, run here, do that. Like I just felt frozen. And as I was frozen, it just kind of gave me a chance to kind of just look at things. And the following year, 2022, was an absolute low point for me. My dad passed away after a very short, really traumatic, really painful battle with cancer. It was terrible to see how much he suffered and how they could get the pain under control, and he was hallucinating. It was just so tough to see a parent go through that, especially a parent who had always been, you know, so strong and would always, you know, have a joke and that kind of thing, to just see how quickly that was set on, and how difficult, how painful it was. That just absolutely rocked my world. As well as I felt really young to lose a parent. You know, there's never a good time, but it just still very much felt like I needed a parent.
Mhm.
So that hit really, really hard. And then 2022 was just the year of loss after my dad passed away, which was traumatic enough on its own. I lost a bunch of other people and things that were close to me, including my childhood friend and my soul dog. So it was just trauma after trauma after trauma in a very short time span. And I just couldn't do it. I ended up getting diagnosed with PTSD and severe depression. And one of my PTSD triggers was the sound of heavy breathing. And it is so hard to exist in a world where just the sound of breathing will just drop you to the floor.
Mhm.
So it was a struggle. I was not fine. I absolutely was not fine at all. And I was able to do my job enough and keep living things in my care alive. But in the absence of anything outside of that, I was just a mess. I couldn't do anything else. I didn't have the motivation, the time, the energy. It was a terrible downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a long road, but I'm in a better place. I'm getting to an even better place. There's still bad days, but the good days far outnumber them. But one thing I found is kind of now finally being on the other side of all of that trauma. What does success look like to me now? It's definitely not what it was before, but what does it even look like now? And what I found is, for my job, I will still give my best effort no matter what. I owe it to my employer, I owe it to my coworkers. It's a pride thing too. I want to do my job well. So I will still always do my job well, but all of my goals and my definition of success are no longer tied to it. So I will still do my job, but I'm trying to find other ways that feel like success to me. And what I found too is it's really on a different scale. So back in the day, I was thinking years out, decades out, like in my goals and what I thought success was. And now it's days, sometimes hours. Like on a bad day, I'm just focusing on that day and what success can look like with how rough this day is. And sometimes it's even by the hour, what can I do to get through this hour with self-care and self-preservation. And if
Mm-hmm.
I can make it to the end of that hour, that was success.
Mm-hmm.
And on good days, it still looks really, really different. It might just be success was I made a nutritious meal, which is my lunches for the week, or I didn't feel like running, but I got out and moved and power walked or ran a few miles, or I had a great conversation with friends, or talked to someone I hadn't in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I took time for myself to rest and recharge. So
Mm-hmm.
stuff I never would have thought of before is now success to me because it's helping to keep me healthy and moving and productive and happy. And it's definitely good for me. It's my best version for myself, but also I can give my best version to other people, which is definitely not what I was able to do in 2022. Even
Mm-hmm.
before that, really, because I was working so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel more like I can bring my whole self, not my part self. So it's better for me, but it's better for everyone around me that has to put up with me as well. So
Mm-hmm.
success now is very much on a different scale. It's day to day, and it's also just micro tasks and goals that just keep me, continuing to heal and keep me whole and keep me happy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Did you want to talk about anything else? I think I got through all my interview questions, but if you wanted to talk about something else, I'm happy to give you a platform.
Um, how about we turn the table on you for a second while I think? So I'm your
Oh,
first guest on your podcast. What are some of your plans for it?
um, really what I want is just get the word out there of different things that people do, you know. I just find you so interesting and you're so smart and you're so like put together and your words just I don't know. I feel like you'd be an excellent teacher, like a professor someday. If you ever wanted to go back for that, I support you 100%. So my goal really is I just want to get information out there. Something that I've learned with Drew is there's so much knowledge that I just had no idea. And being exposed to new things and new ideas and I just feel like we could all use an education on the world, right? I feel like everybody should know what a female engineer does or what a ABA therapist does. And um I just I don't know, I think you're interesting and that's why I'm honored that you came on and uh gave your interview and I'm sorry if it was like or whatever, like we're still getting through the bumps and stuff and it was a little like scattered because my questions and but anyway, I think it went pretty well. So,
So it's funny you mentioned the professor thing. So I currently do teach classes. I teach project management classes. I love it. It's actually the favorite part of my job. So I definitely wouldn't mind teaching more, at some point. So it's definitely
mhm.
something that I like to do.
That's
But
perfect.
I love
Yeah.
the mission of your podcast of learning and sharing information. So I mentioned I love my true crime podcast. I will definitely make sure I add yours to my list.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you so much. All right, Beth. Well, it was such a nice little conversation with you this morning. I'm so glad you were here. Did you want to leave any leave with any words of wisdom or what would you say to the young girl who wasn't sure if science was for her? what would you encourage a little girl who was interested in science to do?
Um, I would encourage her to think of it as an experiment, because experiments don't always have to go right or wrong. So just think of it as an experiment. Okay, I'm going to, look into science and see what else is out there. Maybe it's for me, maybe it's not. But, kind of like with your podcast with sharing information, at least look. You never know until you have all the information. And, start talking to your teacher, or especially if you know a grown up that works in the science field, see if you can't job shadow them or learn a little bit more, or see how you might be able to fit in, especially too if you can find, a female engineer or someone like that to kind of have that representation to better visualize yourself in that role, all the better. And the one science teacher that made the most difference to me, she was a female teacher. And I do think looking back on it, that might have been part of it. I mostly
Mhm.
had male teachers up to that point, and I had a female science teacher. And I think that somewhere kind of clicked in my brain, if I like this, there's someone like me that's in it.
Mhm.
And that's what kind of led me down that path. And then to have that first female manager too, just kind of upped it in my brain of, wow, there's another person that looks like me. So for a little girl that's not sure on it, and especially that's holding you back, that it is still tends to be a little bit more male dominated, look to see the people that, are similar to you, or even just a similar personality to you, to see how you fit in, and just start to explore it and treat it as an experiment. Experiments don't always have to work or pass. So maybe it isn't for you, but it was still worth your time to look into it.
Mhm. That's wonderful. All right, Beth, thanks so much for your time, and we'll chat soon, okay?
All right, thank you.
Bye.